Hello and welcome. Today we're diving into one of the most foundational texts in the world, the Book of Genesis. We're going to walk through its epic stories, all the way from the dawn of creation to the beginnings of a nation.
We've all heard the stories, right? Adam and Eve, Noah's Ark, Joseph and his amazing coat. But before we get into the journey inside the book, I want you to think about something else. How does an ancient text written thousands of years ago in Hebrew and Aramaic even get to us in clear modern English? It turned out that journey is a pretty incredible story all on its own.
So, for our walkthrough today, we're using the New International Version, or the NIV. And honestly, to really appreciate the stories, it helps to understand the absolutely meticulous work that went into just getting the words right.
I mean, just look at this process. This is not one person sitting alone in a dusty library. We're talking about a 7-step, multi-layered system that involves around 125 different scholars, several rounds of editorial committees, English stylists, and even field testing with real people. Every single word goes on this incredibly rigorous journey before it ever makes it to the page. So why all the effort? Well, think about it. A team approach means you get the best of everyone, and you cover for any individual blind spots. You've got experts in ancient Hebrew arguing with specialists in Greek and textual criticism. The whole point is to filter out any one person's biases, so what you end up with is this finely honed translation that's been shaped by intense discussion, not just a single opinion. Okay, so you have this incredibly careful translation. Why? Well, it's because of the absolutely monumental stories those words tell. And that story, of course, starts right at the very beginning. It's gotta be one of the most famous opening lines in all of literature, right? With just these 10 words, the entire stage is set. We're introduced to a world that's described as formless, empty, and dark, with the Spirit of God just hovering over the waters. And from that emptiness, Genesis describes this majestic, orderly process of creation over 6 days. On day 1, light is separated from darkness. Day 2, the sky is formed. Day 3, you get dry land, seas, and it all bursts forth with vegetation. Day 4 fills that sky with the sun, moon, and stars. Day 5 fills the water and the air with creatures. And finally, on day 6, the land is filled with animals, and at the very end, humanity. This is really the climax of the whole creation account. Humanity is shown to be completely unique, made in God's own image, sort of a reflection of the divine. And they're given a purpose, to be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. It's a moment of really profound dignity. All right, so the scene shifts now to this perfect garden, a place called Eden. Adam and Eve have everything they could ever want or need. They have total freedom, with just one exception, one single boundary. And this one rule sets up all the tension for these first few chapters. And then you get the voice of doubt in the form of the serpent. And it does way more than just tempt. It attacks God's very character. The serpent basically says, God is lying to you. He's holding out on you. It promises that real knowledge, real power, comes from breaking the rule. You'll be like God, it says, framing that one boundary as a cage. They make the choice, and the fallout is immediate. Their eyes are opened, but not to some great enlightenment. Instead, they just see their own vulnerability. And for the very first time, things like shame, fear, and blame enter the human story. All their relationships with God, with each other, with the world around them, they're all fractured. And they are exiled from the garden. As generations go by, the consequences of that first act of disobedience just spiral out of control. The story describes humanity's wickedness growing and growing until it hits this dramatic, world-altering turning point. A total reset. I mean, the text paints this really grim picture of a world so corrupt that its creator is grieved by it. But in the middle of all that darkness, there's this one little glimmer of light, a righteous man named Noah, who finds favor with God. What comes next is a cataclysm. Rain pours for 40 days and 40 nights. The waters surge across the planet for 150 days, and the world is essentially washed clean. All the while, Noah, his family, and pairs of every animal are safe inside the ark. When the water finally goes down and the ark lands on a mountain, it's like a brand new start for humanity. And this is where a really key idea in Genesis comes into play, the covenant. God makes a binding promise, and not just to Noah, but to all life on earth.
He promises to never again destroy the world with a flood, and he seals that promise with a beautiful, lasting sign in the sky, the rainbow.
Okay, so the camera, so to speak, zooms way in now. The narrative shifts its focus from all of humanity to just one single family line, the family through which a great nation will be born. This is the time of the patriarchs. It all kicks off with a man named Abram, who God later renames Abraham. He gets this call from God to leave his home, and he's promised that he will become the father of a great nation. That promise gets passed down to his son Isaac, and Isaac's son is Jacob, whose name is eventually changed to Israel, and he has 12 sons. These 12 sons become the ancestors of the 12 tribes of Israel. You can literally trace the story from one man to a family to an entire nation.
And let me tell you, a huge driver of the story from here on out is just family drama. Isaac's twin sons, Jacob and Esau, could not be more different. Esau is this rugged hunter, his dad's favorite. Jacob is a quiet guy, a homebody, his mom's favorite. This favoritism fuels this bitter rivalry that leads to all kinds of deception and betrayal, with Jacob scheming to steal his brother's birthright and his father's blessing. And the family dysfunction doesn't stop there. A generation later, Jacob makes the exact same mistake, showing obvious favoritism to his son Joseph. And, well, this creates a murderous jealousy in Joseph's older brothers. They conspire against him, toss him in a pit, and end up selling him to traders on their way to Egypt. Joseph's story is just an incredible roller coaster. I mean, he's betrayed and sold into slavery. Then he's falsely accused and thrown into prison. But even in the lowest of lows, he has this gift for interpreting dreams, and it gets him noticed. He eventually gets called before Pharaoh himself, correctly predicts a massive famine, and gets promoted to second in command over all of Egypt. He ends up saving the entire region from starvation, which, you guessed it, sets up a dramatic reunion with the very brothers who sold him out. And when he finally reveals himself to his terrified brothers, he says this. Something so profound, it basically sums up a central theme of the entire book of Genesis. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. It's this powerful statement of forgiveness, and it reframes all his suffering not as some random tragedy, but as part of a much bigger redemptive plan. And so, Genesis doesn't really end with a neat little bow. It's more of a cliffhanger, right? The family of Jacob, the Israelites, are safe and they're thriving down in Egypt, all thanks to Joseph. They're not in the promised land yet, but they're growing into that great nation God said they'd become, which perfectly sets the stage for their enslavement and their ultimate rescue in the next book, Exodus. Which brings us right back to where we started. We began with this painstaking translation process, this incredible human effort to preserve these words accurately. And we've journeyed through these epic stories of creation, of failure, of judgment, and of promise. And it all leaves us with one last question. If so much care was taken to carry these ancient stories through thousands of years, what are we supposed to hear in them today?